Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we delve more deeply into how each and every one of us can discern our life path and the purpose for which we were born. Before we delve into that domain, I want to provide a few updates. I want to draw our attention first to Gaza, where there were more high-tech bombings of the Palestinians around southern Gaza, also in northern Gaza, as the Israelis continue that occupation and genocidal campaign. It's happening within the context of Ramadan, the holy month for the Palestinians and for Muslims around the world. And we have a situation of extraordinary spiritual intensity, military constraint, and it's unclear how the next several weeks, because Ramadan lasts for an entire month, are going to unfold. So let's all hold those people and that situation in our hearts. I also want to comment on the recent statement of Pope Francis with regard to Ukraine. You may have seen in the news and followed the controversy around his extraordinary comment late last week that the Ukrainians needed to be courageous enough to raise the white flag and negotiate for peace. He's called for negotiations from the very beginning of the war with the Ukrainians and the Russians. He's offered to be a peacemaker, and each and every time he's been rebuffed. And the comment that I want to make based on his last statement of raising the white flag is that if you understand what's going on in Ukraine, there's really no other option left for the Ukrainians and for the West than essentially to sue for peace. I've mentioned that per capita, the numbers of Ukrainian soldiers being killed every day is equal per capita to the number of civilians that the Israelis are killing in Gaza. It's an extraordinary thing. Well over 450,000 Ukrainians, soldiers, have been killed or wounded since February 24th, 2022. They're being killed or wounded at a rate of about 1,000 a day. The army is unable any longer to withstand the Russian attacks. The Russians are moving forward and consolidating. They're bombing the Ukrainians with on an average of 100 high explosive bombs every 24 hours along the front line. So what one sees in Ukraine, even though it's hidden from the mainstream news, is carnage. And rather than sue for peace, like in the Middle East, like in Gaza, rather than demanding a ceasefire, rather than insisting on humanitarian relief to keep people from starving to death, the United States and the EU and NATO refuse to come to terms with the reality that Ukraine has been defeated, just like they are refusing to come to terms with the reality of genocide in Gaza. It's an extraordinary moment that rather than doing the most obvious thing in the world, a ceasefire in Gaza, how many more people have to die? a ceasefire in Ukraine. How many more people have to die? Our governments are not only refusing any negotiations anywhere, but are ramping up the military hardware. In Gaza, as President Biden over the last couple of days have talked about red lines and how they're going to do a floating pier, he authorized over 100 different military shipments to Israel. In NATO, there's discussion of NATO countries actually sending troops down into Ukraine and expanding the war rather than suing for peace. So at this time of Ramadan, at this time of as we approach Easter, let us consider carefully what Pope Francis is indicating, that we need the courage to raise that white flag. It's okay to have peace. It's okay to negotiate. And in fact, that's the mark of moral maturity, the willingness, even if you're winning, to negotiate for the cause of peace. So thank you for joining Humanity Rising today. And now we want to essentially carry forward our discussion yesterday with Dr. Ferguson on synchronicity and that phenomenon that happens to people when their egos are aligned with the larger zeitgeist of the time and the cosmic alignments, and they begin to live in flow, where apparently completely disconnected phenomena begin to cohere in a way that empowers them to be more of who they essentially are. And today we want to deepen that discussion with Cynthia Bledsoe, who's been on Humanity Rising before. You may remember she did a 5-day program on the spiritual nature of numbers. We're all constructed of numbers. We all have a number. Our names, various aspects of language are associated with number. And today she's back. She's a futurist. She's a healer. She's someone who's very passionate about how people can integrate a sense of purpose and human well-being and social harmony into a reality in which the whole is not only much bigger than the sum of the parts, but we discover the deeper layers of the reason why we're here at this moment in history. All of us were born with a purpose, and our life's challenge is to discover that and then live into that. And that's what Cynthia Bledsoe is doing. And so she's going to make a presentation, then we'll have a short dialogue, and then she'll be joining the after chat. So you're all welcome to join the after chat for a deeper conversation. So Cindy, welcome to Humanity Rising. And I turn the program over to you, and I'll circle back after your presentation.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for that warm introduction, and also for your nuggets of wisdom that we look forward to every day. And I look at you, Jim, and see someone living in their purpose, and it makes my heart glow today because you're such a perfect example of what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to set the intention today that if you feel your purpose is that of a peacemaker, to really join us in a heartful space today and consider how you might further that purpose at a time when the world needs you the most. So as Jim said, I'm a futurist, and what I enjoy doing is taking the lessons learned from the past, bringing them into life with the experience of the now, and very mindfully imagining and seeing how we can create the best possible future. So for those of us who like to spend time in that space, we're a little busy these days as we navigate the chaos of our current evolution, but there's a way to do that more consciously. And one of the ways that I express my purpose in life path is through storytelling, through film and television and books and plays and all of those spaces where we can learn to imagine ourselves in new ways and then decide how to put our purpose into more conscious action. Recently, in the course of doing that, I came across a beautiful film. The film is called The Hidden Power of Purpose, and it was produced by AARP Studios, directed by Elliot Kotek and his team at A Nation of Artists. The film takes a look at what we now know, not only about philosophy and spirituality, bringing purpose into our lives and helping us discover purpose, but now science backs it up. So we have metrics for those who need that part of the picture in order for something to be complete. But it also makes the whole story of us much more complete when we can back it up in this way. I love this film so much, and it taps my purpose of trying to nurture harmony and human potential that I've actually begun workshopping the film. So for those of you that want to take a deeper dive with me in that, we can talk later about how to bring that to your community or to work in online wisdom circles to really practice not just experiencing the film, but reflecting on the wisdom in it, and then potentially taking it into conscious action. You know, one of the things I love to do, as Jim mentioned, is study how the universe creates harmony, and that's through the power of number and sacred geometry. And we all entered this world at a very specific time, an important time of our own choosing that was structured just for purpose. So today I'm going to take the science and the spiritual wisdom of the power of purpose and ask you to walk with me to integrate that into your numerology life path number, which is the single most important number in your numerology chart. That's why you're here. So in essence, today's presentation is why. And what will happen, you'll discover, is when we are living in that life's purpose, suddenly everything does feel very synchronistic, but it's actually on purpose. So I'm going to challenge your thinking in some ways, but mostly I would just like you to experience the power of purpose through the life stories of 4 individuals. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we'll just walk through some of the content, beautiful stories, and some of the new science that AARP found in their film, The Hidden Power of Purpose. Today's message on the power of individual purpose is really how to thrive. We'll be looking at how there are many paths to discovering your innate purpose here now, and how you can integrate that with the life path, which is your why. Who are you? What's your life's aim? Is it possible that the answers to these 2 questions can make you live longer? Well, there are people that are finding such meaning by aligning purpose in their life and in their work, that they're finding that it can lead to greater health and well-being, greater states of happiness, and yes, longevity. And science is backing that up. At the University of Michigan, it was found that people who live in a path of purpose have a 2.5-fold lower risk of death. This is one of the thousands of scientific research studies that now support what was once a philosophical and spiritual notion. And Steve Cole, a researcher at the UCLA School of Medicine, says over and over that this factor of living with purpose is nearly as important to your well-being as not smoking or not drinking. And folks, this world, this planet that we are on, spends $10 billion on self-help, with mental wellness being the #1 category. And my thesis proposes that living in the power of purpose can eliminate the feeling of necessity of this type of spending, which is astonishing. Many of you will recognize Sanjay Gupta. He's an associate chief of neurology at Brady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, often seen on CNN and in films and documentaries like this one about health and medicine. I love this quote of his. I like to use it a lot, actually. He says that your 2 most important days are 1, the day you were born, and 2, the day you figure out why. So in a word, what I'd love for you to seek as your experience today is your why. So we now have over 1,000 scientific journals and studies showing that living with purpose improves our mental, our physical, our emotional, our spiritual well-being. And that those people who have been studied, who are living in this way, experience less depression. They have a greater ability to manage their emotions. And their resilience factor seems much higher than average when experiencing trauma and stressful situations. So let's take a look at 4 lives that are profiled in the film, The Hidden Power of Purpose. Each one of these individuals has found their purpose and is experiencing a life of all the rewards that we've just talked about. These people are parents and neighbors and nurses. They don't wear capes, they're not superheroes, although you may think that they are after I tell their stories. But the point of that would just be that each and every one of us within the sound of my voice has that same superpower within them, and that's your power of purpose. I'd like you to imagine meeting Mark Barden. Mark and his wife are parents. One morning they got up to get their children ready for school, and they had a few extra minutes left. So Mark sat down at the piano with his son, who miraculously, at such a young elementary age, had already found his purpose. And his son knew that music would be his life's purpose and his gift to the world in some way. So Mark sat down with his son and taught him a new song on the piano, and he played it. Then he put him on the school bus. But he didn't come home because this was Sandy Hook. Mark, his wife, the other parents and families experienced grief and heartbreak beyond our imaginations for most of us, no matter how hard we try to empathize with them. Mark would tell you if he were here that his grief was suffocating him until he realized that his body was now carrying such powerful energy from the grief that was what felt like he was suffocating. So he decided if something was that powerful, there must be some way to turn it into something good. And that's when he got together with other parents and decided to create a nonprofit called Sandy Hook Promise. Sandy Hook Promise is for children. Sandy Hook Promise provides programs in schools so that children can become more aware and be more mindful of their environment, so that if they see something, they say something. Sandy Hook Promise now has programs in 14,000 schools. Mark would say that he found a new power of purpose. Each day, 8 children in America die from gun violence. But Mark's purpose is beginning to do something about it. They have documented that from children seeing something and understanding that they can say something, that 57 school shootings have been prevented. Now please meet Shirley. Shirley's the founder of Latino U College Access Program. Shirley came to the United States when she was 10 years old and met her mother, who was already in New York City, working as a housekeeper to help improve the lives of herself and her family members. Shirley watched her mother work so hard and make so little progress, and she became very determined to learn to read and study so that she could have a better life for herself. She made it through college, lived in New York City, and was thriving on a Manhattan Avenue advertising agency, doing marketing and advertising, and really being stimulated intellectually. But in her heart, there was something unfulfilling about her life. And it was when she volunteered for a Latino food pantry that she actually found her life's purpose. Shirley was very aware that Latinos received the lowest average college financial aid among all racial and ethnic groups because she lived it herself. She was also aware that most Latino students have parents who can't read and write. So it's not possible for those parents to help them crafting essays for college entrance. By being the first in her family to get through this challenge and receive a college education, and working side by side, volunteering in the food pantry, Shirley finally envisioned a way, through the creation of Latino U College Access, to develop training programs in high schools to support students in their educational pursuits. And to date, 224 students who have been through Shirley's programs have received undergraduate degrees, the first in their families. Shirley found her purpose through her own personal life experiences. Some of you may recognize Whitley Phipps. You may not realize that you may have seen him first dancing on Soul Train in 1979, when he was the first gospel singer to ever appear on Soul Train. Whitley became a singer, a songwriter, a music producer. Whitley's had many iterations of his life's purpose. Many of you may have seen him sing at U.S. presidential inaugurations and official ceremonies that we have in the United States. Whitley likes to say that purpose is not what your blessings are. Purpose is how you use your blessings. And I like that. Whitley was using his musical talents as a music ministry in the prison system when he began to realize the tremendous challenge that the children of inmates were under to just navigate the educational system, similar in a way to Shirley's work, but in a very different context. Whitley knew that this was the next iteration of his life purpose, so he founded the U.S. Dream Academy. The U.S. Dream Academy is just for children of incarcerated parents. Not only is he helping them study and learn life skills and provide tutoring services, not only is he fulfilling his life's purpose, but he's helping children find their life purpose early in life, which is so beautiful. Now meet Karen, who's a nurse. Karen works in a hospital setting, often helping to navigate the transition of end of life and helping families and patients enter hospice care programs. But it was when she worked with homeless patients that her compassion rose to a level that actually helped spark a new purpose for Karen. Karen's heart would break each time a homeless patient was released from the hospital when she knew she would never see them again and that she was sending them back to shelters to die. So Karen had an idea which evolved over time to become Hildegard House. Hildegard House in Louisville, Kentucky is a hospice for the homeless. Homeless persons entering Hildegard House can live out their final days surrounded by love, tender care, and are able to transition with dignity in the manner of their own choosing. Karen tells a beautiful story in the film about a particular patient that really got to the heartstrings of all the volunteers there at the hospice house, because he clearly was at end of life and he clearly was very uncomfortable, experiencing great pain, but he refused to take any medications to alleviate his pain. Despite many volunteers trying, he refused all medications. One day he seemed especially uncomfortable and Karen could hear him crying. And she went to his bedside and she said, "Look, I've done this for many, many years, and I know I could have something that could make you more comfortable. Wouldn't you rather transition easier?" And he said to her, "Miss Karen, I was addicted to that stuff my whole life. That's how I became homeless. And I am not leaving this earth that way." So all the other volunteers surrounded his bed, held his hand, enveloped him in a field of love. And he was able to pass in his own way. Karen used her power of compassion to tap her hidden power of purpose. And now Hildegard House is a model for other cities to provide this miraculous, compassionate service of hospice for the homeless. So what happens to us when we are living in purpose? What physically is happening? Here we are, spirits chosen to embody, come into form, and we have this vehicle to use to fulfill our purpose. But how does it really work? Sanjay Gupta was one of the first physicians to say, why do we only study the brain when it's not working, or when someone's sick, or if they've had a stroke, or with brain disease? Why aren't we understanding better how it actually works for us? So these are illustrations of what we now know from certain parts of the brain that regulate our emotions, that are activated and coming into fuller regulation and balance when they're observed in people living a life of purpose. So this is part of now how science is joining spirituality wisdom in order to make a more holistic case for why this is true. This study was rather interesting in the case of a group of ovarian cancer patients. Over time, they were studied and asked to put themselves into a group of someone who felt like they were living with purpose, or were they someone who felt they had a low life purpose. They were asked this, of course, after their cancer diagnosis, and there was a 2.5-fold impact on longevity between those who considered themselves continuing to have a high life purpose as opposed to those who did not. So what are we talking about when we talk about purpose? There have been attempts to define it. I would ask for you to define it yourself, but I'm certainly here to give some guidance and start to hold a space for how purpose might be defined. But it has been defined as a central self-organizing life aim. But as we've seen, there's so many paths to that aim. Anthony Burrow, in particular at Cornell, studies how people find purpose through hardship, like some of the stories that we just heard. I do not have enough slides to show you all the scientific research that is now in a measurable format to support how our overall well-being is supported through purpose. Here's Mark again. These are some still shots from the film, The Hidden Power of Purpose. Again, referencing the 57 school shootings that were prevented by Sandy Hook Promise, creating programs in schools for children. Would you pause with me just briefly and send some gratitude to Mark, the other parents and volunteers who have made this happen, and to some love to Daniel, whom you see here. And here we see two of the graduates from Shirley's program, two of the, I believe, 224. So we see that there are many paths to purpose, and some people experience one singular purpose throughout their life, and they're very focused on that from the early in life all the way through. Others kind of have breadcrumbs that lead them to a newer purpose and a greater purpose and a bigger purpose. But there are many paths leading to that, from tragedy, like Mark experienced, from past life experience, as Shirley tapped. Wentley, there's no telling what he'll do next. And then in these stories, Karen used the compassion that was swelling in her heart to spark conscious creativity for what's needed most now. In the film, Deepak Chopra, whom most of you would know as a physician, author, spiritual teacher, is really grateful for now the methodologies and the technology that's been developed that supports what he knew all along. So as he sat with us in these wisdom circles and spiritual places and philosophy, and when we knew that what we were gathering around had major impacts on our well-being, he couldn't actually implement that as a medical doctor because of the documentation required. But now we have that. So now what he tried to do for so many years, by trying to illustrate the relationships between emotions, our molecules, our mind, our body. Also, Bruce Lipton is in this film. Some of this may resonate with some of the work that he does. But all of this can now be correlated into biological metrics. So now we have, as it turns out, of all things technology, it has been a divine gift to confirm what we knew all along, and it helps us quantify what we knew as extreme quality in our lives. The purpose of that being that now we've integrated these two sectors for an even greater body of knowledge about what it means to be human and what it means to live in wholeness and well-being. So what does the power of purpose unleashed in you look like and feel like? These are some of the questions that you might ask to get yourself started. It's a time of reflection. And when we workshop the film, we experience the film together. But then we move into very individual, solitary reflections to try to focus on those things that we value. Have we been so distracted with the outer world that we've forgotten what we value in our heart? What's important to you? What life dreams are still on the list? What is it that makes you move in the morning? Not just get out of bed, not just wake up, but what moves you through the day? What are those things that you must do? These are all clues to your purpose. And my purpose, I've discovered, is to help you find your purpose. And one of the ways I do that is to combine the wisdom of what we've just talked about with what's known as the life purpose within the science of numerology. There are many numbers that make up your being here and make up the cycles of your life and provide the sacred geometry that is unique to you. But the one most important is the life path number, and that's the one that's most directly aligned with purpose. So I began to study how if we integrated the wisdom of our life purpose, the wisdom of our life path, with the power of knowing our purpose, what great potential could we reach as an individual? And if we can do that, what great potential collectively can we reach in order to consciously evolve into the best future possible for humans at this time? So some of you may recognize this slide from a previous episode of Humanity Rising, where I was delving into numerology and the life path. So I repeat it here just to give you a bit of the science around how to calculate a life path number. This is not my birth date, but I am a life path number 3 with very strong 9s everywhere. So I refer myself, because the characteristics of the numbers 3 and 9, I refer to myself as a creative humanitarian from a sacred geometry standpoint. My life path, though, is 3, so I'm always pushing the edge of creativity in whatever I do. So would this person that hypothetically was born on August the 12th, 1990. And in the calculation, you see you just break down each day, date, and year until we get to single digits. We keep reducing until we get to a singular digit, 1 through 9, and in this case, it's a 3. If you'd like to delve into this a little more today, we'll do so in the after chat, and it's certainly part of the film workshop. If you know your life path number, this is just a refresher on some of the strengths and talents and characteristics that those numbers have. Apparently I'm supposed to be witty, but I have to work on my inner child a little bit. If I'm number 3. So you can glance there if you know your life path number. If you happen to write down how to do the calculation from the previous screen, you can easily figure it out. Ones are those instigators. They start things, they do things. Think of it as that assertive, really go-getter small business owners. That's sort of characteristic. Very straightforward manifestors of the world. If your life path is a 2, your unique genius is bringing us into partnership. So taking the energy of the 1, but recognizing the power of co-creation, of collaboration. It's a feminine energy of joining together. It also teaches great patience in doing that because of this kind of loving feminine sense of cooperation and unity. It's a very harmonious number. We talked about 3, so I'll skip that. If your life path is a 4, we really need you because you provide stability. We often talk about the 4 corners of the world. We talk about squaring the circle. The symbol, actually, in many ancient languages that use hieroglyphics and symbologies for words, use the square for earth. It's that grounded, dependable organizer. If you're a 5, wow, we see you coming. You might be a wild child. Were you? Anybody that know you're a 5? Did anybody ever tell you you're a wild child? You're vibrant. You love freedom. Your life study is all about determining what freedom means. And we need you because we live in a time of chaos. And that 5 brings in the chaos. But it doesn't necessarily have to be challenging if we recognize it as an opportunity to reorganize for the higher good. But you 5s bring in the love of that, not afraid of the adventure. So you help us navigate it. If you're a 6 life path, this is the most harmonious number. And the 6 is one I used to illustrate that the shape of the numbers themselves actually begin to illustrate the meaning behind the number. The 6 looks maternal. It looks like it's carrying something to be birthed just by the shape of it. 6 is the nurturer, the caretaker, the peacemaker, the harmony. And in the broader sense, the world. And then we get to the 7, which if you look at the shape of the 7, it almost looks like something looking back in on itself, which is what the 7 energy brings. It brings us reflection. Philosophers are born under this number. Strong intuitives are born under this number. These are our thinkers, our seekers, and our seers. And then we have the 8, often misunderstood. 8, as above, so below, creating a sense of balance and justice. Some call it karma, but it's actually truth coming into form. People born under the 8 tend to be very successful, intelligent, able to manage extremes of things and bring them into balance, and often find themselves working in fields of law and justice. If you're a 9, we really need you now. People born under the influence of the 9 and have it as a life path are those focused on global issues, social impact, humanitarian, conscious evolution, incredibly tolerant of diversity. So this gives you an idea as we dive into life paths, how important and powerful it can be to integrate that with the power of purpose to really find our true human potential. So let's look back and see what it might look like when you're journeying through purpose. So my recent journey and my purpose as a life path 3, that's the creative, supported in large part by this repetition of the number 9 throughout my chart, which is humanitarian. So I'm looking for creative solutions that impact the social good in a large way. I recently have been so blessed to work with, for some reason, the universe has just blessed me to be able to work with some amazing female African American filmmakers that have profoundly changed my life and my perception of what I believe the truth to be, and that have awakened me to trauma in my life that I've been able to use for good. So one of those examples was recently working on the film Origin, directed by Ava DuVernay. Ava is a life path 6. So she's that wanting to birth more harmony and good in the world. And she has a lot of that 9 energy of the humanitarian, but her chart populates with 1. So she's an initiator. She's a manifester. So you can see how she's using her power as a filmmaker to change the world. And this film, to me, is a change the world kind of film. I could tell when I was on set how profound it was going to be. It's inspired by the book Caste, The Origin of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. You may know Isabel because she also wrote the best-selling book, The Warmth of Other Suns. The film Origin was inspired by the book Caste, which is Isabel's thesis for the fact that global societies and their net of interconnection are all based on a caste system. And that race is simply a subset characteristic of living in caste systems. The film Origin was filmed in Savannah, Georgia, in Germany, where we recreated the Holocaust, in India, where the filmmakers captured and experienced firsthand the caste system, alive and well in India. Ava could have just made the film and told the story, but she didn't do that. She said, I'm not making this film unless I operate the set with the message. I know many of you have never been on a film set, but I can tell you it's one of the most hierarchical places I've ever been and ever tried to work in. It's very difficult because of the ego, the hierarchy, and all the power sets that are competing with each other. It's very delineated. Even at lunchtime, when certain crews have the hot seafood buffet and another set within the caste system is having cold sandwiches. And that's just one simple example. But you feel it, you notice it. Ava said, I'm not doing that. Each day I was on set, I watched her arrive on set and go around and physically touch and welcome every single person on that set in front of and behind the camera. Some of these scenes were so difficult to do, like the Holocaust scenes and things like that, showing our oppression over history and in time in the caste systems, acting out that we had many takes and retakes and we were very emotional and it was hard to regroup and get it all in. So it was really hard to come back the next day to do it all over again. But Ava recognized that, and each person she thanked individually for coming back because she knew how hard it was. I never at any time on that set felt hierarchy, not once. Each person felt equal. We talked about it afterwards. We went to the theater together to see it together. We were so convinced that we were going to get Oscar nominations, but because Ava did not subscribe to the Hollywood playbook of how we made the film, she was snubbed. The film was snubbed, but that's okay because we're going to workshop this film too, because this is a film that we need to experience together and have conversations about that will lead us to our purpose, our renewed sense of purpose for a better world that we know is possible. So this is how living in the power of my purpose is impacting me. It's led me to start workshops through the power of storytelling of film to then gather people into conscious conversation to lead us to conscious evolution. So this is what happens if you experience the film workshop. You have an experience of the film. In this case, in the hidden power of purpose, because it's the desire of the filmmakers, the film is absolutely free. The workshop starts out free to just view the film in its entirety. And then because we're seeking to help people find their purpose, we then enter the workshop session where we begin to more personally reflect on our passions, our talents, and we learn what our life path number is in numerology. Then as we delve deeper, go a little bit deeper personally to discover through conscious creativity, which is really applying your life path and purpose to your life actions. How do we apply those passions? And that's where you start to receive some of the benefits we talked about increased well-being and happiness, and yes, even longevity. What has happened so far is organically, as people move into their individual purpose, we've begun to have synergy circles or wisdom circles where those people come back together and they say with their passion, they stand in the center and say, this is what I want to create. I must create this. And these are my skills. Here's what I can give to it. And then just as naturally as I breathe, someone will speak up with a complementary purpose and say, oh, I can help you with that because I have this that I can add to it. So then you see how we go from experience, reflection into conscious action by discovering the power of our purpose and living in our life. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see many of you in the after chat. We're going to work on some life path readings in the after chat. We'll strategize how different life paths could find their purpose. And we may even, if we have time, do some spontaneous life path reports from some kind of famous people that you might be curious about and wondering what the heck is their life path. So thanks again for sharing this with me today, and I look forward to helping you find your purpose.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you very, very much. You know, it's so inspiring to hear your stories. I'm thinking especially of the first one, of, you know, what it must have been for those two parents to, you know, the father, you know, as a father, to hear about him sitting down in the piano before his son goes off to school with all the enthusiasm and the love and the warmth that was shared, and then never see him again. It must have been, and then for him to be able to come out of that with a purpose that is now bearing fruit, really, in over 14,000 schools, is an extraordinary journey for anybody to take. And so, you know, that's the one thing that I wanted to just sort of tease out, because we'll break in a moment here for the after chat, because I know you have a whole program planned for that. But, you know, the relationship between the discovery of one's purpose out of the trauma that one experiences is one of the deeply mysterious aspects of both purpose and trauma. What gives us the most fulfillment is that which often is tearing us asunder. And we'd just love to have you comment on that.
Yeah, can I just note something in the chat that relates to this? Someone just posted something about sometimes things have to fall apart. And I know this happened to me recently. I thought I was well aligned with my path and working in a dream job and doing all these wonderful things, but realized that they weren't really mine. And so, very often, as the universe would have it, um, we have forces that work with us to help us see the greater truth that we become blind to. So, and it often happens in those times that we can't explain, but something very difficult or challenging will happen that causes our world to tumble. And many times it's a way of helping us let go of those things that are not necessarily in our way, but that we're just distracted by. Our fields of energy can only hold so much. So we have to decide with discernment what we're going to allow in. And sometimes we simply just get stuck in the routine of what we're already doing. But if you see someone like Wintley, he's constantly aware and mindful of what's presenting and what needs are and how his skill might be used in a different way. So he's one that kind of hopscotches from one purpose to another, doing all these lovely things. But yet that doesn't mean that he's living in greater purpose. That's just his pattern. That's just the journey that he's chosen. But many of us, I would say most of us even, will find purpose through something at least uncomfortable, if not tragic.
Mm, mm, mm. What a paradox. What a
Yes.
paradox. Well, listen, everyone, I think we'll bring it to a close for now. Again, because Cindy has a guided meditation and so forth she wants to share in the after chat. So we'll remind everyone that you can see the link. You can get the link for the after chat in the chat box. You'll receive the link in your Zoom reminder for today. And then tomorrow, we're going to be starting a 3-day program with Stephanie Mines and Spring Chen on regenerative health. So that'll be starting tomorrow. But thank you so much, Cindy. You never cease to be an inspiration. Always appreciate your presence on Humanity Rising. So thank you.
It's been a joy.
All right, everyone. You can see Cindy in the after chat. Bye for now. See you tomorrow.